Peju Ugboma had every intention of living. Her elective fibroid surgery was supposed to improve her life. Instead, it led to her death. And her family wants to know why. Here's what we know. On Thursday, April 22nd, Peju entered this hospital, Premier Specialist Medical Centre in the Victoria Island area of Lagos. The cost was 1.5 million naira, approximately $4,000. The surgery was carried out the following morning. Some 48 hours later, she was pronounced dead. Left behind are Peju's heartbroken family, which include 2 young daughters and a husband. He's distraught and unable to talk to us on camera, but has allowed us to speak to a family representative who was elected not to be identified. Amid the loss and confusion, we begin our conversation with his fondest memory of Peju.
I can't really even tell you just one fond memory, because even the day before the surgery, she was Peju. She made jokes. She was very optimistic. She had this very positive outlook. She made plans for a few days after the surgery. This was someone who was filled with so much love and always expressed it. So, yes, that's who Peju was.
Tell us, when first did you realize something was wrong?
After surgery, she complained of very acute stomach problems, but I mean, we assumed that would be a normal reaction to surgery, especially in the abdomen area, and the loss of blood pressure. So at that point, we're a bit worried. The doctors seemed to know what they were doing at the time, and we thought she would come around. Unfortunately, she didn't.
The day after the operation, Peju was losing blood. Her family say doctors at Premier told them she needed a transfusion, but they did not have her B+ blood type in their blood bank. The family was able to organise 9 pints through a crowdsourcing campaign on WhatsApp. But Peju's blood pressure had dropped as low as 50/30. Hours later, she was transferred to the intensive care unit. Thereafter, the family were asked to make another payment before she was put on a respirator.
We were in touch with a family friend who is also a consultant gynecologist abroad, and he had actually clearly stated that she must be bleeding internally, and he also insisted on speaking with the doctors, and we made sure that happened. We gave them the phone, it was on speaker. He told them in very clear terms that he's quite sure that she's bleeding internally with the information he has, and they should go back in and, just stop the bleeding.
What was their response?
I mean, they said they had heard him, but it didn't seem like they acted on it.
The family say the hospital insisted a CT scan be performed before any further action was taken. Premier does not have a CT scan machine, and so the decision was made to transfer Peju to Evercare Hospital in Lekki, some 7 kilometers away.
It took 3 hours before she was moved from Premier to where the CT scan was to take place, and if there was that didn't show any urgency.
Another payment of 1 million naira was made upon arrival, and according to the family, work began to resuscitate Peju. Those efforts were in vain, and she was pronounced dead. Soon after, the family say Evercare returned around 750,000 naira to the family.
The guys at Premier left and promised to return with the death certificate. They did after about an hour and a half or so, and one of them had actually mentioned that Premier would like to carry out an autopsy. We later decided that an independent autopsy should be done. We put the independent pathologist in touch with a doctor at Premier, and he had demanded for the case note, photocopies of the case note. And the autopsy had been fixed for a particular day, Unfortunately, he called again and said Premier is yet to send him, the case note. I called the doctor at Premier and asked why, and he promised that it would be sent at a certain time. I waited and I called at that time he promised, and he said that they were still working on it. And I think he said something about having to make photocopies, and I was wondering, how long will it take? This has been almost a day to make photocopies. I'm confused. And I said, if photocopies are the problem, I can assist. When I called again, he still said the same thing. So at that point, we decided to drive to the hospital to find out what the problem was. The doctor at that point, now seeing us, said it wasn't really his own responsibility, but this was the same doctor who had promised the day before. It wasn't something we were trying to collect. We wanted them to send it to the pathologist.
It's important to note, at the time of this report, Premier Hospital has not made any public statement and insists it does not comment on individual cases. However, I spoke to staff involved in the matter, off the record, with the understanding their identity will remain confidential. Their account of events are somewhat different from that of the Ugboma family. According to this source, the delay in handing over Peju's medical records and case file was due to them seeking legal advice. Protocol dictates the request for the files from the independent pathologist must be made in writing. The hospital source says that a formal request was never made, and goes on to say another delay was due to the time it took for photocopies of each document to be made. Further, I was told the drainage system for Peju had failed, and doctors were initially unaware of the internal bleed, and when they were aware, the decision not to return Peju to the operating theatre was made due to concerns about her pre-existing health conditions.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but I wasn't told about any, or I'm not aware of any high blood pressure being the reason why they couldn't, go back in her to stop the bleeding.
The independent autopsy was not ready at the time of this report, but the cause of death listed on Peju's death certificate issued by Premier was acute renal injury.
There are a lot of people who have lost loved ones to needless situations, situations such as this, and we just hope that it will stop, that finally people will be more responsible in carrying out their duties, especially when it has to do with people's lives.
Make no mistake, this death, much like any other in similar circumstances, is tragic and may be a byproduct of wider issues such as fake and faulty medical equipment, brain drain, and the reason why many in Nigeria still prefer to travel abroad for medical treatment. The Ugboma family say they are in touch with lawyers who are assisting them in determining whether Peju's death was as a result of negligence. Premier Specialist Medical Centre has received stellar reviews across the 30 years it's been in operation. In that time, though, mortality is inevitable. But the question is, was this death preventable? Many await the answer. Adefemi Akinsanya, Arise News, Lagos.